right, we're gonna get this fired off an hour later than I had even planned. But when you have a teenager and you make your plans known to them instead of respecting that, you tend to end up with whatever you get. And unfortunately, my son's rebellion is to put a kibosh on any of my plans by procrastinating with his schoolwork. So it has already been a fun day, and my nerve level is at frayed right now. And as you can see, we're going to be kicking off from almost the beginning with this fuckery. And I don't know why stuff is opening up. So let me get rid of that little thing. I had a thing set up for captioning that has just made my system go haywire. So I'm just going to turn that off. I apologize to those who have been waiting for better closed captioning. I am trying to work with different apps to make this happen. But I want to welcome y'all to the Bonnet Chronicles. I'm getting fired off before the chat gets fired up. And even if the chat joins me or not today, because it is a bit earlier. Friday nights will still be at 7 p.m. EST, but I need to do these a bit earlier on the regular school nights because of all the stuff we have going on. And I'm trying to shoot for 4 p.m. EST, but it might have to be 5 p.m. EST thanks to the way the teenager does and sometimes doesn't do his schoolwork. So, like I said, it's starting off this communications breakdown with the thing that set me off before I went to bed last night. As you can see, this ass clown who decided to weigh in on how black people should feel about the N word. And this is ongoing in the discourse of the Joe Rogan saga that is really starting to annoy me because there has been nothing but people of color, white people, and all non-black people weighing in on what's their acceptable level of bigotry, which I keep reminding people you really shouldn't have any acceptable level of it. But for some of you, telling us to get over a word that has been used to dehumanize my people. After the last Bonnet Chronicles, he just made the point that I was trying to stress last week about why, even though I want our two communities to work together, some have found an approximation to white supremacy, a comfort within it, even though they are hurt by it too. Their community is hurt by it too, but they can get enough of a respite and be better than us black people. And I can't pretend like this shit doesn't exist. I can't just say, oh, forget about it, work together, because then you got assholes like this who try to say, well, we're the most persecuted, so we're telling you to get over it. And it's like, this is not a fucking competition. I know our common enemy is white supremacy, but don't act like you, Mr. Saad, doesn't have problems with the way you treat people, with the way you dehumanize transgender people, with the way you act like your marginalized status allows you to shit on other human beings, especially black people. The root of hate is anti-blackness. Whether people want to admit that or not is not my problem. But you're not going to get away from the fact that the root of hate seems really baked in, hate in the color of my skin. And it's just insidious. The amount of people. And I can't believe, as I'm freaking saying this, the fucking like actually goes up on it because there are enough people who really feel like, oh, we should just get over the word. You say the word in your rap stuff. I've heard students use the word with each other, and I don't know how to feel. It's not your place to weigh in on what racism does to the people who are the victims of said racism. I don't care what your group goes through anymore. I'm at that point where I have to take no prisoners with this. Because the simple fact is, y'all are now trying to use your ancestral pain to tell me mine isn't enough, to tell me that hearing that slur being used by somebody with $100 million fucking contract to spew hate and misinformation is not enough to speak up about. I'm fucking tired. And this feeds into a lot of shit that has been acceptable for a while. One of the things, I was on YouTube earlier, and I'm going to switch to just the camera because I'm about over Twitter right now as it is. I was on YouTube earlier because I like to tune in while I'm getting work done between checking kiddos' schoolwork. And one of the things that bothered me was the rise in these young males on this Twitch place. I'm going to call it a Twitch place. I'm old. I don't care. Who seem to want to take out this energy, this angry energy. And I'm not acting like teenagers aren't surly. I was surly. My kid's going through a surly phase. What we don't do is translate that surliness into attacking other people. And I inserted my opinion about black males into Def Noodles. If you don't know who Def Noodles is, he's a YouTube commentator that talks about different dramas and stuff, celebrity and YouTube wannabe celebrity alike. And one of the things that I've noticed as a gamer is the acceptable levels of misogyny that goes on, the acceptable levels of isms that go on that shouldn't. But there was this issue with these kids, and I'm going to call them kids because I'm about at least 30 years older than most of the people involved in this situation. Playing fucking Roblox, which is Roblox. Is it really that serious? And there's a beef between the two males in the situation because we can't just play games, have a friendly rivalry. We have to devolve. I got a lot of he said, she said from the commentating in that YouTube thread, which I don't care. I'm going into full mama mode. I don't give a fuck. There was too many wrongs on each side in this situation. But the whole idea of, well, yeah, he shouldn't have brought it there by pulling in the sister, but there was N words being thrown at him. And like I said, two things can be true at once. It could have been beef between him and the brother in this situation. There could have been a beef between him and the whole entire family. The fact of the matter is, the sister had nothing to do with the situation, and this young man brought her into it. He said some really shitty sexual things to a child. I don't care if he's a child either. We gotta stop excusing bad behavior on the precipice of, well, this person's going through it. I don't like that. And I made it clear that was my stance. I also watched a white man try to weigh in on both trauma, which is not his place, what bullying and words can do to a person's psyche, which is not his place, and then racism, which is definitely a lane that I really want straight white men to stay the fuck out of right now. I know some people have given you the line that we need your voice to speak up. No, I'm not in that camp no more, champ. Not in that camp anymore because you took a situation where this young man had a beef with somebody else, decided to amp it up and pull in an innocent party, and got caught in it. Whether or not the sister was supposedly faking it, the moment that young black man decided to pull her into it, he made it a problem that it didn't need to be. And he's far from the other one. We had another guy who decided to hate raid Pokimane of all people. These are people that they're not in my circle. I have no beef or anything with this, but I do notice that if a female, especially streamer, has any amount of success, she has to deal with the hater nation. And then you have a bunch of these commentators who, when you go looking to see, well, is Pokimane just a bad person? Is this why so many of these people have come out against the things she did? And you find out she's done nothing. She's been playing video games and she has a large following, and people want to hate on that. And I'm not acting like people online don't have problematic things. But when you go looking for the so-called problematic things on this young lady, you don't find much of anything but fucking jealousy. And then you have this young male decide to hate raid her. And all these people want to say, well, that's what she gets. She just put herself out there. And she did. Now, we've got to stop all of this bullshit. This whole idea that it's okay to be this way because that's just how it is. I've been in gaming for over 30 years now. I know. Okay, boomer, to some of you young kids. It is exhausting just wanting to play a game, have fun with my friends, and deal with this fucking aggression for no reason, but you've got female parts. It is unacceptable to have somebody pulled into a beef between two Roblox players that had nothing to do with her and then accused of, oh, you're faking it. Oh, this family is just trying to platform a black voice. And it's like, come on now, son. He stepped into the trap card in this scenario. He could have kept it between him and the brother. Yeah, it might have still escalated and the family might have tried it, but they would have had to unpack the fact that two males can't handle their beef well. It wasn't until Killix decided to pull the sister in that it became the issue it became. And everybody wants to pull in the family lied about his age and tried to make him sound like a predator and stuff. And it's like, look, you don't want to be accused of being the predator. You don't want somebody accusing you of doing something you didn't do. Your best scenario is not to pull them into your beef in the first fucking place. The stuff I heard with my own ears coming out of his mouth towards her was gross. And there was no reason for it at all. She had nothing to do with the beef between him and whatever brother was involved in this Roblox thing. But this is the dumb shit that people allow as acceptable. And it ties right in to all of this stuff. The Joe Rogan stuff. All the stuff that goes on online as we're just communicating the system. That's why these white guys are online talking about, well, Joe Rogan will have this, George Orwell will have the same problems as Joe Rogan. Yeah, no shit. No shit reminding us that white men historically have had issues with racism. Welcome to the chat, Respect. I just feel like a lot of people keep showing us that they have these acceptable levels of bigotry, and it's really starting to exhaust my spirit at this point. I don't get why you think you're making the point when you're telling people of color that, well, these men of the past would be dealing with cancel culture. It's not cancel culture. It is the consequences of their action. And it's funny, like I said in the last Chronicles, how Whoopi had to feel the consequences of the stance she had on the Holocaust. Whether people agreed with it or not, ABC took action. But when we call for somebody like Joe Rogan, who's had a problematic history with both logic, science, facts, and racism, on top of a bunch of other bigotry that he's unpacked over the airwaves over the years, all of a sudden now it's like, oh, cancel culture. And this anti-woke lean, because this is why I had to bring up the YouTube stuff. Because I've been seeing this sentiment from a lot of young people online, and it needs to stop. The whole I'm against being woke now all of a sudden because being woke to you won't get you friends. Being woke won't make you popular. Being woke means you think a bit too much about other people's feelings and actually want to use some fucking empathy. And welcome to the chat, G. Feldman. It really is so funny how, yeah, exactly, Respect. Acceptable levels are always anti-black. And I am just so tired of the typical terms. Cancel culture. Oh, they're trying to cancel me for my opinion. When your opinion is rooted in dehumanizing people, when your opinion is rooted in making sure that people are miscategorized and, treated as lesser, then yeah, nobody wants to hear what you have to say. It's the consequences of your fucking closed-minded actions. But the whole anti-woke thing has been on my nerves for a bit now. Because it went from me not liking the term because people were really misusing it, to me realizing that it's not the term that's the problem. It's people's interpretation of what it means to be woke. It's people's interpretation of who's too woke. The whole idea of being too woke, because calling out bullshit now is a problem. But the bullshit we're calling out is literal bigotry. So you're anti people who are against bigotry? Like, make that make sense. It doesn't. And that's the problem that I feel like people are trying to skirt and dance around. It's like I said in that Bonnet short on Twitter the other day. You see who's doing it. I can't unpack all the whys, but I can be 100% that 30 years ago, it might have been me. That's why I'm able to call this shit out the way I call it out. I grew up in Staten Island, New York. Those of you who know that borough know how troublesome it is. Those of you who have had any approximation to so-called middle class or wealth understand the amount of fuckery that goes on in boroughs like that. where you are probably the only black face in your classroom because your family, who I had to learn a lot of my anti-blackness that was taught to me from in the community, and we're going to get to that tonight. That whole proximity to whiteness can fuck up a black mind, can fuck up any person of color, because you start acting like it's no big deal. But it is. It is a big deal when your peers look down on you and try to act like, oh no, you're the good one. We'll treat you differently, even though we hate everything about who you are. And some of us, we played into that because we thought, well, any acceptance is better than no acceptance. No, it's not. That shit eats and erodes at you. That freaking microaggressions and macroaggressions all on top of constant dehumanization. You can only wear that mask of it's okay for so long before it fucking cracks. And that is why I'm trying to reach out to people so that less of us have these nervous breakdowns from it. Trying to be that black friend when your friends really don't have your back is exhausting. And I want to pull so many of you from this sea of fuckery as I can. That's why I speak up on it. I'm not speaking from some, oh, I was always down for the cause bullshit. No. I am constantly working on all the anti-shit that I used to accept as the norm. And I'm telling you, a lot of my anti-blackness came from within the fucking community itself. And we can't even begin to touch upon that issue because we are too busy fighting our so-called allies who want to tell us to get over a slur that has been dehumanizing us for over a century now. It is fucking tiring. And I came out strong again today against black men because some of you have been skirting the fucking line as it is with saying misogynistic, pretty much toxic shit against women in general, LGBT in general, and then falling back on, well, I'm suffering too, and it's gotta fucking stop. And then when you're called out on it, it's, oh, you're anti-black man. No, I'm not. I'm raising a black man. I understand that it is complexity. Two things can be the same. You can be dealing with hatred and still be a toxicated, hateful being. And you need to work on that. Because I am not going to trade getting rid of one beast for another. And I think black men don't want to hear that shit, but you need to. And black women who amplify this as your little pick-me girls need to hear it too. Because I am not going to trade one idiot for another set of idiots. I am not going to keep having somebody devalue me based on my fucking gender and think that that's acceptable. I'm not trading one ism for another. I want all of that shit eradicated. And if you are not with me, if I'm not communicating that well enough for you, if it's too woke for you to process, that is a you problem. It is so frustrating at this point, having people who should have more common sense than they do weigh in on what's acceptable to them. Y'all are turning video game beefs into fucking retaliation nation. And the root of the problem comes with insecurity, labeled as, oh, I'm just trying to get a rise out of this person. But you took it to a level where you had to dehumanize a girl that had nothing to do with it. And that is a problem within all of our communities, within our species. We seem to think that our gender differences is enough to make somebody feel less than. And then you add on the skin element, and black women don't get a fucking break from any of this at all, ever. And then you wonder why we're tired and angry and snap at you when you mindfully go, well, I don't understand this, black woman. Can you whisper it to me? Can you hold my hands through why I should be a decent human being? Because that shit has been ongoing this month too. 7 days, no, 8 days now into Black history. And I've had more white people unpack their fragility at my footsteps than I need for the rest of my life. And y'all don't like being called out, but imagine how exhausting it is dealing with hate from every fucking side and still having people go, well, we need you to lift us up. That is where black women are right now. We are tired. And you've got to understand that this is not a personal attack on y'all. This is just us stating it's exhausting. And maybe you can do your own research. Why should I have to explain things that it's common sense? How hard is it for you to go, okay, I don't understand your cultural stuff. I don't understand you, but I don't need to hate on you for that. Is being decent that exhausting for you? That you constantly need somebody that looks like me to tell you to be a decent person? Come on, man. It's just tiring. And then you get told, oh, well, I don't want to be labeled too woke or an SJW. And, having empathy and thinking that others is a bad thing, then be a bad person. If that's the new bad, embrace it. I'm willing to be the villain if I'm the villain in a Nazi's fantasy. I'm willing to be a villain in anybody who wants to dehumanize somebody's life. You have to pick your role. And if your role in being socially conscious makes you the villain to somebody who wants to dehumanize you, oh well, embrace it. Like, I don't even understand how it makes sense to people to go, well, I don't want to be too woke. I don't want to find problems in other things. I don't want a world where we have to keep finding problems in this. But you know how we're going to get rid of that? By shining a light on that shit so that it stops. That's just common fucking sense. But you get these people with large platforms that want to go, well, we can't be too woke on this. We can't cancel people on their hatefulness. Because then what about me? What if I want to say something hateful? That is basically what y'all are unpacking. Like Whitney Cummings, who I forgot she existed. Honestly speaking, never really was a fan of her comedy as it is. But to have her weigh in on the Joe Rogan thing with the leans of, well, comedians aren't the moral arbiters, They're not here to be the moral leaders. That's what our government's for. And you can just feel the peroxide pores seeping through the brain stem in her head when she decided to tweet that level of fuckery out. And it's like, what is your point, Whitney? We're not trying to say that comedians are our moral leaders. We're just trying to say that when your shit's not funny, we get to call you out. We get to say, hey, this shit's not funny. We don't want you getting paid for it. That's just how it works. It's called the consequences of your actions, hon. And I know that people like you who get to be that edgy white chick don't want that. Too many of yous don't want it. Because for yous, we are still the punchline to your jokes. Our pain is funny to you. It's why the fucking idiots from South Park could get with Kendrick Lamar to try to make a movie about dating somebody whose ancestors owned the person's ancestors, because that's just ha-ha funny. And then they disguise it as, we're just trying to have the conversation. That was another bullshit that they tried to say about this Joe Rogan stuff. Oh, it's just to have the conversations out there. But you don't want to have the conversations. That's why so many of your fucking peers are storming school boards, talk about CRT and banning books. You don't want to have real conversations about hate because you don't want to change it. Because some of you lean into it. Some of you find lucrativeness from it. You don't fucking care, and it shows. And it's very exhausting from those of us who are the constant brunt of said hate to have to overlook the fact that some of you don't want us to focus on it. Some of you want us to feel bad for being socially conscious, and that's not going to happen. Like I said earlier, and I will repeat it, if I'm the villain of this story because I want to be socially conscious, I'm willing, able to accept that role. Unlike some people, I am very open about my mental health thing, about my ability to detach, about the sociopathy in my life. And one of the things that I will not fall into is being shamed into being too socially conscious. Oh, she's too socially conscious. She's calling out the guy who called out the guy about racism because it wasn't his lane. Fuck yeah, I am. Because if you're not black, you need to watch where you step when you weigh in on racism. This Papa Guts guy, and I'm going to bring him up only because not only did he downplay a female's trauma on being harassed online, which made me side-eye him, but as you go digging deeper, and he admits to this stuff. This isn't stuff I'm just dredging up. He had a transgender issue that got him knocked off of TikTok. He seems to have this real weirdness when it comes to women that is acceptable to some. And when you call him out on this, you get, well, he stands up for you people, and it's like, record skip, stop it. I don't need an ally that can talk about the racism I'm going through, but downplay the issues I'm going through as a woman. If he can't unpack all the need that I have, he's not a useful person in my life. And I don't need him in my circle. And I found it funny that he could go after the family about alleged racism and say that they were misaging the kid in the situation based on racism, which could be. We black people know how we are aged ahead of our years, even when we're children. But it's not his lane. And he crossed over with that white man authority that I keep trying to remind y'all, if you're not black, you will never understand the nuances. So maybe keep your opinion on what is and isn't racism to a minimum. That is your best bet for me. If you don't want black women like me who have lived this life to check you, if you don't want us calling you out on your bullshit, maybe don't weigh in so heavily like you know what the fuck you're talking about. The thing that bothers me is that they utilize talking about our pain. They utilize very real aspects of racism so that people go, see, he knows what he's talking about. There's a gotcha, so that we don't look at some of the other things he pushes. He tried to layer trauma based on stuff that happened to him. And one of the things I can tell you, as somebody who has survived some real serious trauma, including sexual assault at 14, is that I never downplay other people's pain based on what I went through. That is a very big red flag for me in the commentary community. One of the things I respected about how Dennis, Def Noodles, handled that Papa Guts guy was he is not in the place to downplay other people's pain based off his own skepticism. We can be skeptical about things. We can have opinions about things. I have opinions about Monica Lewinsky. She is one person that people keep trying to make into a victim of her circumstance based on what happened between her and Bill Clinton. And while I could say, maybe I could see the lean of a powerful man using his position, that was not the case. It was willing, it's on fucking tape. Yet people keep trying to twist the narrative of, oh, Monica Lewinsky was a victim. Now, that is my opinion on that. I know that there are some people that would get upset by my opinion on that. Oh well. But the problem is there are people that take their opinion and make it law. I don't have to be right on my feelings on the Monica Lewinsky thing. But I always make things a case by case basis. And if she felt hurt by what happened there, if she felt traumatized, it's not my right to take from that pain. It is funny how anytime a major election comes up, her shit comes out of the woodwork to try to remind Democrats that Bill Clinton was bad. We already kind of got that vibe that Bill Clinton had some deviant problems. But it's when you make Bill's problems all of our problems that I'm going to have to stop you. And that is the problem with communications and messaging. It's funny how people still try to hold our whole party accountable for people that we already cussed out, cut out, and threw out. We have gotten rid of Democrats when they have stepped out of line. The other side can't say that. Yet people really act like any kind of accountability for blatant misogyny, blatant racism, blatant hateful acts, period, is a step too far. And hey, it still says D&D. Oh, that's weird. I thought I updated that. Sorry about that, y'all. Yeah, it's weird. Let's see if I can fix that in the whatchamacallit without getting a whole bunch of sound feedback. I am very old So all of this stuff is kind of newfangled. Let's mute this so that oh no. Okay, it updated, says communications breakdown. But thanks for the heads up, Zai. Um, I just feel like with social media, we all tread dangerous grounds. And it really does set the tone for the elections part of this evening's talk because no, it's fine. If anything's ever wrong with the stream, I like having my friends look out, and you like a sister to me, so don't ever worry about that. But I feel like a lot of people are utilizing their voice and their platforms in good ways and not so good ways. I'm seeing a lot of people trying to play the king and queen maker syndrome, and we've got to stop that. I get that we have some key elections coming up. We have races all over our state. But some of the really contentious ones, like Pennsylvania, Georgia, Florida, and Texas, are really big on people's tongues. And there are people that live in the state that are weighing in, rightfully so, because they're directly impacted. And there are a lot of people that don't live in these states weighing in on who should do what. And it's like, I get that we all have become armchair pundits over the last few years. This has been our lives. Some of us have really been in the political trenches, digging up information, pulling out data. We have our own ideals on what works. But it's not our place to tell a candidate who is doing their best to run for office whether or not they're wasting people's time. I am really leery of that within our party. And I've seen it all week. And this isn't to call one or any particular person out. It has been a sentiment within our party for a while, but it's starting to become a new norm that I don't like. I get, especially after last year's primaries, how it feels like some people do waste our time. Some people waste our time and our resources. Some people have way more money than brains and they jump into campaigns and they push out good people. It was one of the things that we seen with VP Harris. One of the things that I respected about her campaign was her realizing that she was up against billionaires. She was up against this country's misogyny and racism. And she decided not to waste her staff's time and bowed out because it was the right thing to do. But exactly, respect. And I think a lot of people aren't getting that. Primaries are a competition to support who you want. Even I am guilty of that. I said last week that Nina needs to go away. For my own personal reasons. I do not like what Nina Turner is doing. But she has every fucking right, as much as I don't like it, to run in Ohio. I just hope that when the people of Ohio reject her yet again, she gets it through her noggin. But old Fivehead isn't. She'll carpetbag, I guarantee fucking to you. Because it's more lucrative for people like her to run and grift that way. But there are people legitimately running under a party. And they're humans. They're going to step in it. And PA is a highlight of that. I don't like John Fetterman. I'm making it clear. I am not here to defend a man who literally chased down a black jogger with a gun because he thought he looked suspicious. I don't like the fact that he looked like a fucking bum meeting our president after a bridge collapse. He reminds me so much of my dad that I think I unpack a lot of those issues onto him too. Just looks and attitude too. Just that I'm just a slovenly everyday man because even though my income doesn't match that, I can, pour porn so that people think I'm the average working class Joe. And that fucking narrative has been going around for a while. That working class people are just this, we don't care about our opinions, our appearance, we're just that salt of the earth bums. And it's just like, nah, dude, not okay. So I'm not pro Fetterman, but even his weirdly bigoted ass has the right to run too. And then we have all these people who are just anti Malcolm Kenyatta, and I get it. I probably wouldn't vote for him. He leans very heavily towards that Justice Dem talking points that makes me kind of leery. But outside that, he has every right to run if he feels he has a shot. That is what the primaries are for. And he can learn from how many people vote for him, what he needs to do next, if at all. I think it's very, really disheartening having fellow Democrats discourage people. I've worked on campaigns, I've worked on long shot campaigns. And it just bothers me when a candidate is discouraged from within. One of the things that I learned from the last campaign I worked on was organization matters. My friend was very young still. He made a lot of mistakes, but he learned a lot of stuff around the way. And he came in fifth with no name recognition in a state that already had a lot of people with money running and everything else. So when you act like these primaries, people should just drop out because they're wasting time. Whose time are they wasting? We need this discourse so that we know what to look out for and what we're running for. You gotta stop discouraging people from running unless you plan to run for something. That's why I said the whole feel this week has been people trying to be king and queen makers using social media, and it makes me leery. We need to stick to the facts of the situation. We need to let people run. If they lose, they want to maybe they're collecting that data on how to run the next time. Losing is a big part of running for any political office. Even our current president understands what it means to lose an election, and you don't give up. So when I see people telling people to just drop out of a race because they're wasting time, it makes me leery. I don't like it. That should be the candidate's choice. And if a candidate feels like they can still run, if the candidate feels like they still have something to weigh in, it is on us to just vet and listen to what they have to say and then decide with our ballots. I don't think what I'm saying is that bad or lack of common sense comes to it. But I feel like a lot of people, you start getting a certain way, and I'm telling you, this comes from experience, y'all. When I was running the CCC, which was my group before all of this started to take off with these one-on-one casts, we were constantly trying to figure out what candidates we should amplify, what candidates we should discourage. And then I realized that is not my place. So when I say this, I'm trying to save people not only from burnout, but from backlash. Because eventually you're going to be labeled toxic if that's all the message you have is, oh, this person's wasting time. You should get out of there. I know I get my jabs in, so I'm not a perfect person in this. And like I said, I will always come for the idiots that I feel waste a seat. But there's a difference between attacking a sitting representative who wastes time and doesn't get bills done and discouraging anybody who wants to take the time to run. Just because they're running for something doesn't mean they're going to get the vote. And in this contentious time, I want to see what people are saying. I want them to put themselves out there. That way we can shine a light on their antics, especially the far left. I know for some it's exhausting dealing with their bullshit, but if we don't see it and they try to do it more secretive, it'll be even worse for us. So let these little idiots run. Let them spew their stuff, counter it, and keep it moving. We had a group called the CCC. It was a joke. We were called the Clan Crushing Crew. We didn't want to use the K in there because I didn't want any affiliation with the Ku Klux Klan. But it was a group of me and my friends that not only did interviews, but we talked about politics and social issues. And it was a fun time at first because I thought we were all on the same page, and it ended up devolving. And there were a lot of things. Egos. One of our friends flat out died, heart attack out of nowhere. That started the fractures in the group. We had guys that decided to use our group's name to slide in the women's DMs and act inappropriate. And then those women blamed all of us for their antics, and it was a fucking mess. And it's one of the reasons why, even though people have tried to invite me into groups and network and all that stuff, that I'm leery of it now. Because as much as I believe in the cause, whenever too many people group together, you always end up dealing with this clicky, weird bullshit. And I just don't. I've learned my lesson. And it's sad because I still love the majority of the group. I still try to keep in touch with many of them, but I don't feel the same about grouping anymore after that experience. After trying to have a roundtable podcast and feeling like I was forcing people to show up to something that I thought they wanted to talk about, it became more work than it was worth, and it really soiled me to the group stuff. And I carried that into other projects that I was asked to join, and I didn't want to do that to them. I know people thought that I departed Snatching Edges way too soon, and it was not Tony. It was just my feeling of dealing with group stuff that I did not want to keep putting onto that cast. It's stressful for me. So now I do these by myself. I can do them at my pace. If I feel like doing a Bonnet Chronicles extra nights, I can do it. If I don't feel like doing it, you guys are more than understanding. But what I learned the hard way was not putting all of my faith in other people. Making sure that I'm doing the right thing, making sure that if I step in it, I apologize, and checking myself is far easier than trying to run a group. And one of the bad things about groupthink is there are a lot of people just trying to fit in that will parrot stuff for you. And then you start getting this infallibility where you can tell somebody you're wasting time with your campaign instead of going, you know what? I don't like what you have to say, but I'm going to focus on the candidate that I do feel resonates with me. And I'm not going to lie. For me, if I was in Pennsylvania, Connor Lamb makes more sense. And not just because he's the white moderate that most white people feel comfortable with, because that's a whole fucking bunch of bags to unpack that I'm sick of too. But because he has genuinely shown through his work, through his actions, and being very transparent, especially when people try to call him out on stupid shit, that he's not going to play these games. This is why he's running. This is why he's here. It's one of the things I respected about Beto's run and why I'm pushing for his run for governor in Texas. He has always been up front. He is a human being. He has stepped in a few times. He's done stupid things like the counter thing. But he's not above saying, hey, I'm learning as I go too. Pete Buttigieg is another one. Team Pete people got on my nerves. I was very upfront about that. Some of you were very abrasive with your pro Pete fuck you attitude. And I called a few of you out. Few of you are still blocked. Some of you had to announce your departure from my following because you didn't like that I was calling him out on his time as mayor. But even he had said, I've made mistakes. I'm learning from them. And he has leaned into his place as growing within the Democratic Party. That's why I said, go by how people are. There are some people that are constantly showing us, like Fetterman, that they have no intention to change. This is who they are. Take it at face value. A lot of us don't endorse it. PA is shown. They're not endorsing these people. They will either learn from it or they won't. But what I will not do is tell people not to run for something, because unless my ass is planning to run a campaign, which I've already said due to my mental capabilities and just stress levels, I'm probably not. I have no right to tell people who are going to take on that amount of stress and running whether they should or shouldn't. And even when I am being my normal punchy self for people like Nina Turner, I know I'm saying that with no right to tell her not to run. So I want to make that caveat tonight. I don't like the fact that she wastes people's time and money. I really don't. I wish she would just land like a motivational speaker position somewhere and go away. Just motivate whatever suburban soccer moms get inspired by her hello somebody and stop wasting time. But she has every right to waste people's time because she's at least running for something. I don't have to like her. I would never vote for her, but she has the right to run for stuff. And that is just the way it is. And I appreciate that respect. I really wish, honestly speaking, I could handle the pressures. I'm human enough to realize that I have a set limit. And our government, whether people understand it or not, is more complex than the media portrays, more complex than people make it out to be. That's why when people were getting upset about Joe Biden being nice to Mitch McConnell, that I was just like, do you not, hey, Glassjaw, welcome to the chat. Do you not understand that these are human beings? As much as I cannot stand Mitch McConnell, based on all the stuff that he's done over the years, based on him on record being obstructionist, it doesn't mean that beyond the years, him and Joe Biden, especially when they were both senators, had to see eye to eye on things and didn't have dialogue to help pass things. You have to realize that being an adult means dealing with complex shit. And that you're not always going to understand stuff because it's not always meant for you to understand. It goes back to my original point. I don't see things within the vein of everything has to be the way it worked for me. My trauma is mine. I don't use my personal trauma to cancel out other people's trauma. I might be skeptical of it, like I said with the Monica Lewinsky thing, but I don't downplay that maybe she felt trauma from all the bullying that came from putting her sexual escapades out there. But what I can't stand is that they're trying to put her trauma on the same level as sexual assault, because it wasn't sexual assault. And I think you can speak on this without minimizing if you've walked this walk. But there are people that like to gatekeep trauma. There are people who have nothing but adjacency to trauma that weigh in that make me leery. That was my problem with that Papa Gut guy. He really weighs in with this authority, like, I know what I'm speaking about. Listen to my voice. I have a microphone and I'm talking about these issues. And then when he steps in there, it's like, well, I'm just a human being. And I get, we're human beings. We're meant to make mistakes. But you're making a lot of mistakes that, as a woman, for me, makes me go, not for me, buddy. And then you get enough of your fans that want to defend you, and I get that. What I tell people all the time when you follow me is usually not my foot soldiers. I can fight my own battles. If I have a beef with somebody, that is between me and them. It is very rare now when I have problems with people that I even air it out. Sometimes you'll find out that I've blocked a mutual by accident because it's not for me to put out there. And I went from being that kind of person. It's exhausting. I don't want to lead hate mobs against people. If I have a problem with somebody on Twitter, that's between me and them. It doesn't have to be between me and them and everybody that follows me. That instigated bullshit just reminds me too much of growing up in New York and fighting with people. It's not fun for me. And I don't want to drag people into that. It never stops at that point. And some beefs aren't even that. Sometimes somebody really says something stupid that gets on my nerves, and I just decide I don't want to see them anymore. It doesn't have to be a big thing, but some people, they get into their heads that that's what they're there for. And I tell you, there is a difference between admiring something about somebody and being completely blindly devoted to them that I don't want people doing for me. I know I can't stop it, but I want you to think. I want you to hear what I say, and if there's something wrong, check me on it. That is the real of this situation. I am a human being. I am not infallible, and I am making mistakes as I go along in this life, just like all of us. But unlike some people who are unwilling to be checked, unwilling to take a fair and valid critique of a stance that they're so passionate about, they want these big followings to defend them at all costs. And you've got to be careful of that, because we're seeing that with Joe Rogan. I told the young man the other day, because he was like, well, I'm not white, and I think Joe Rogan's the bee's knees, basically. And I was like, okay, what's that have to do with the point I was making about him calling us apes and the N-word? You know, I'm not stopping you from who you like, but you jumping into my mentions. I didn't call on you. I don't even know you. You decided to make it your personal fight for somebody who really doesn't give a fuck about you. It is very rare, now that I'm older especially, for me to jump in any celebrity's defense. Because you realize really quickly as you get older, especially, that celebs are just people who are good at their craft and are just as fucked up, maybe more so, than a lot of us. And I'm not willing to be a foot soldier to their fuckery. Some of you take that fandom to really toxic levels unnecessarily. You want to defend Joe Rogan, but why? And what was it about my comment that needed to pull that out of you? What did you think was going to be the discourse? Did you think I was going to get all shrill and call a manager on you? No, I'm going to block you. I know where you stand now, and we aren't going to have good discourse. Because your first interaction with me was to defend the man that called me an ape. I don't need to talk to you or see you. I don't want you in my circle. That is how I handle. Another thing, before we wrap this up, I need people to start realizing that social media is what it is, but the stuff that you let raise your blood pressure has to end. Some of you are out here letting burner accounts piss you off. Like, if a dude has an anime avatar and a name that's clearly not theirs and is calling you an insult or making a generalization about your orientation, your gender, or whatever, you need to pick whether or not they are worth your energy. I'm not saying don't get upset by their words, because that's been the narrative, and that's bullshit. Words can affect somebody mentally, especially when you're constantly hearing horrible, hateful things. So I'm not saying don't let what they're saying upset you, because that's insensitive and stupid. I'm saying, is it worth your time? Is this the fight you're really going to pick on Twitter? Are they worth it? And most of the time, no. Most of the time, it dings them more that they couldn't get a rise out of you. Because they're seeking you out. You're not out there looking for these people. They have made it their life's purpose to make a fake ass account to start trouble on Twitter. That is fucking pathetic. You know it, I know it, and they know it. But that is how they get their dopamine hit. So instead of continually helping them out with that, instead of continually feeding them, exactly, glass jars, deprive them, deplete them of that energy that they drain so much from so many of us. It really isn't that hard, and I think that's why people make it out to be that hard. I wish I lived in a world where men like Joe Rogan weren't lucrative. I wish I lived in a world where Happy Dude 250, and that's not a real name, I'm just using a name, with a fucking lolly avatar couldn't get into my mentions and talk about black people like he's an expert. But the reality of the internet is it's a large place, and people are always going to unpack and spew their opinions. I don't have to give them my energy, and neither do you. Some of these people, they just make it their life's purpose to rile us up. We don't have to allow them to do that. And in the realms of political discourse, especially with upcoming elections like Pennsylvania and upcoming elections like here in Michigan, I can't afford to keep getting distracted by stupid ass, petty ass fights. I need to keep the laser focus on who's running, why they're running, and if what they're standing for is what I want to cast a ballot for. That is where our energy should be going. But we haven't changed. Historically speaking, we went from one court to another. Whether it's a royal court full of backstabbing and intrigue like in Paris, France, to the internet itself. Whether it's Facebook drama, Twitter drama, or now these streaming channels drama. Everybody wants to be a part of some court and intrigue and act like they're on the right side of whatever fight. And y'all all look foolish at this point. We all lose when bigots continue to be amplified. We all lose when a good candidate has to leave a race and we end up electing somebody who's just a waste of a seat. We all lose when any progress or talk about empathy for fellow human beings is shouted down as being too woke. And like I said, and I will keep repeating this until my fucking dying breath, if me having social conscience and calling out bullshit based on the stuff that I had to unlearn even makes me the bad guy, then I'm willing to be y'all's villain. That's just the way it is. Welcome to the chat, Terry and Tico. I think a lot of people are so afraid of not being liked. And as a sociopath, I've never really had that issue. I used to think I did, and it really literally gave me a nervous breakdown because I couldn't rationalize in my brain, why the fuck do you care about what other people think about you? And then having the issues that I have with my mind and having the voices loudly say, you really don't. So why are you doing this? But you gotta fit in because fitting in is important. And it was a fucking mess. And now that I've let all of that nonsense go, it is freeing. And it's not that I don't like having friends. It's just that I am very upfront that I am not going to be shamed for my feelings on shit. I just don't feel that way. I've always been detached from that nonsense, and now I can be more open about that detachment so that people understand. I used to get all the time, oh, you're just really cold, aren't you? I guess. I just don't allow what other people think to affect me on that level. I had to be that way. When you grow up surrounded by insecure people who just try to make it their life's purpose to dehumanize and devalue me, I either could have let that break me, which it nearly did, especially with Teen 10, could tell you it came very close, or I could build that carapace, that hard shell that I feel like is so durable now. Could it be detrimental? Who knows? I know that it is hard to deal with me on an interpersonal level due to my relationship because of it. Because I can come across as very cold when it comes to certain matters. But that is just how I have developed over time. And I really feel like it gives me that perspective of I'm not going to let somebody shame me for something that's not shameful. It's not shameful to call out somebody when they're being nasty to women. It's not shameful to call out somebody when they're being nasty to somebody based on their ethnic features or the region they were born or their dialect or their religious, deciding to have a faith or deciding to be atheists. We humans need to get it together with how we fucking just hate on each other for the stupidest things. And it just really frustrates me. And thank you, Solomon. It just really frustrates me how many people try to muddle the narrative. And that's why I called this communication breakdown. Because there are too many people who don't want the real frank dialogue, the spotlight on the issues. They want to pull in the what ifs and the what abouts. And that is why I unpacked that YouTube nonsense, because it's the same thing. I made a point about black men utilizing our racial pain to get out of bad behavior. I didn't need the what ifs or he was having a beef with this one. He still brought an innocent party into the situation and used some very vulgar sexual things, which shows to me that this young man already has an issue dehumanizing women. That needs to be addressed. It doesn't downplay the fact that him and the brother were going back and forth and there may have been racial slurs. It doesn't even downplay the fact that the girl's family might have jumped really hard on the ball because the young man was black. It doesn't excuse the fact that he decided to bring an innocent party into the beef and make it an issue and use a lot of gross sexual terms towards an underage girl. Y'all want to keep trying to muddle the narrative, and I've watched this happen with everything. And as a black female, I watch it happen so much that it just gives my side eye. We can still focus on the problem without dismissing the other problems. I'm a very good multitasker. I tell people that all the fucking time. And some of yous really tried to come at me on YouTube with the what ifs and what abouts, and I'm sorry. The moment you try to litigate at me to speak on court terms with the whole, well, this happened, so you can't look at that way. No, that's not the game we're going to play. I'm a mom. I have to look at all the issues. I can't just pick and choose based on favoritism with this. I can't just pick and choose based on the realities of the racism that we all face. Being a victim of racism does not give you a free pass to be an asshole to other people. Being the victim of any ism does not give you the pass to harass anybody. And you can't fall back on that when you fuck up. We see it, whether it's a celebrity like what Kanye's going through right now, to just these average streamers who decide to take out their rage on people and hate raid other people, that it's not okay. You have the right to be angry at the way the world treats you without taking that anger out on everybody around you. And you don't need your little fucking instigators causing you trouble that will end up deplatforming you. So if in any way, shape, or form, one of these young men who I called out tonight sees this, know that I am not denying that you've been through racial stuff. Trust me on that. We know. But it doesn't give you a pass to be angry and hurtful to people who had nothing to do with that. You want to take out your rage on the world, and I get that feeling, but it gets you nowhere. It gets you deplatformed at worst. So all that work you did, building up, following, and getting people that you like dialoguing with, is it worth losing because you want to harass somebody? That person called you an M-word. They already were out of pocket. All you had to do was report them. But no, it's more cutesy to go back and forth and have a beef that exploded. And now you've got different people weighing in on this shit. And like I said, I'm totally momming this situation. I don't give a fuck who said the first thing. The moment that young man decided to pull that other young man's sister, who had nothing to do with the beef, into the fight, he was in the wrong. And so many people want to muddle the communications of this story by pulling in outsider thoughts on it and perspectives and what ifs. And like I said, I don't know this family. I probably wouldn't watch them. I probably wouldn't even like them. I'm going to be 100%. I don't even really know this young man because I don't watch anybody underage. Not worth my time. I already have a teenager. If I need to see a teenager sit around games and say stupid things, I'm a mother of a teenager. I watch him, and trust me, I don't want to do that. All I'm saying is that watching YouTube commentary, getting pieces of these guys that want to speak on authority about my life when they haven't lived that life, had me weigh in. And while some of you were making good points about the situation, the moment you start to try to sway my opinion on what I said about black men utilizing racism as a way to skirt around some of their problematic stances, nuh-uh. We're not playing these games no more. I'm old enough to know when somebody's trying to okey doke me, y'all. And that was what that was. It was an okey doke. It was a, oh, yeah, he did say bad things to this girl, but. And there's always a but. You want to know the only thing I cared about in that situation was the fact that this 15-year-old girl was upset enough to be crying on camera? The fact that her family decided to put that up there was bad enough because child exploitation online is bad. That's a whole thing to unpack there. But the fact that people want to say that her getting on camera and crying was just manipulative and downplay the trauma of being bullied, that really made me speak up. As somebody who has been bullied, as somebody who was aggressive and had to check myself, you realize that you can't downplay a person's place of pain. And she got on there crying because she's 15 years old and had another player saying graphically sexual things to her. All because he was mad at her brother. And I don't care how over amplified her family took to it, it was still a wrong. And if you want to find the problems with this family, that's your right. But you're not going to convince me that this young man couldn't handle the situation better. And yes, I hold him to a different set of standards because of what we go through, because of how easy it is for us to be deplatformed if we supposedly step out of line. So, yes, I think he should know better. And if that makes you upset, oh well. I am a mom, and it is my worst fear to have to deal with a son that acts like that. And I'm lucky for now, the kid that doesn't really like the internet besides watching videos. He has no interest in having a social media. He has no interest in dealing with that stuff. And I'm grateful to it because I see how easy it is to fall into that mentality of, I've got to lash out. Oh, this is just for kicks. If that's you right now, if that's how you approach gaming, especially since I am a gamer, y'all need to stop. It's a momentary hit of, I did it. For what? So that you can get other little insecure trolls around you to amplify you until you lose your platform? Think before you get into these petty ass, ridiculous beefs with people. The whole point of gaming is to escape how shitty things are. We don't need you making our one place to have fun shitty too. And like I said, I don't even play Roblox. I don't understand the appeal of that game. But I know that it's a community full of young people. So y'all really need to chill the fuck out with all of this anyway. It's not that serious, man. For real though. But I'm going to get ready to wrap this up, you guys. I want to thank you all for being in the chat. I know that it wasn't as hyper focused on elections yet. I promise you, as we do more of these, as we get closer to November, there will be more focus on actual candidates and things like that. It's just having this extra day to talk about this fuckery has been really great. And I appreciate you all being a part of the chat and keeping the focus going. And like I said, you know, I'm going to try for 4 p.m., but if it's anything like today with the teen, that could be touch and go. So between the hours of 4 to about 6 will be Tuesday night's realm for the Bonnet Chronicles. Fridays will stay Saturday at 7 p.m. because it's just a good sweet spot for me to get everybody fed and out of the way. But I really do appreciate y'all. I'm going to go make dinner now. I know the kiddo's probably sitting there like, I haven't eaten yet. That's the price you pay when you hold mommy up. But seriously speaking, I will probably be online later on tonight. There are a lot of good spaces coming up that I'll probably sit in and at least listen to. I thank you all for tuning in, and I will see you Friday night.